All right, welcome everybody to this episode of the Passion Project podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, a researcher, journalist, and editor. He worked as a head of Ruminations at Avant Guard Media and is currently volunteering with the Consilience Project. Welcome to the show, Mr. Soren Teeple.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Where do you see, the students' day-to-day life? Are we on this planet? Are we in a room with haptic gloves and a helmet and stuff on? What do you see the future looking like in 60 years?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because I really think we're at this turning point, where there's so much, the world's always at a turning point, but right now I think the choices we make in terms of what part of the Consilience Project, one of those philosophers, he says like exponential technology, the idea that the internet advances so quickly, the idea that, you can have like the Facebook grew from like 10 people to like a billion users in the space of 20 years. Like that's these crazy exponential ideas. So I think that depending on the routes we choose today will be really determining of that future. I think we could go down the metaverse path like you're saying, and we could have just where everyone just lives online. And I think that's a dystopia of sorts, where I think that, and it's sad, but I think a lot of people, one of the big reasons why I try to find my interests, my passions, a lot of people don't find it. A lot of people, I used to live in Fairfield, Iowa, which is in the middle of the United States, and a lot of people there, it's you work on a farm. It's that's your future, and I think a lot of those people jump to go to the metaverse and be okay, screw that, I get to fly around, and I don't know, it's a sad thing. And personally for me, I think that in 60 years, I think hopefully we can use the internet to empower individuals, and hopefully we can be multi-planetary. It would be pretty sweet to be on Mars, and hopefully we can be in person and we won't just be plugged into a matrix type of metaverse thing. That's my hope for it, I guess.
What is the MetaCard about?
So basically, it's for them. It's stock. It's like you're buying stock in NELK through an NFT. So for those of you who don't know, NFTs are something we've talked about this before, but it's this idea where you can pay for this item and it's digitally tied to you, but the value of it can change. So the value, you're not investing necessarily money. You're investing this item. And this token for them is basically, I guess you'd say a membership fee. It's the NELK supporters or whatever you want to call it. And what NELK is trying to do is use this money they gain from the NFT drop to create real rewards, I guess. So whether it's nightclubs or even hotels eventually. I think that's a great way to do it. Is if you have, if you're an independent creator, you can have people support you who believe in what you're doing. A lot of people use Patreon these days. I think that's to me is my best way of doing it. Is you don't try to go to these big corporations because, like you said, they're gonna
put you away, man.
Yeah, or just connect you to strings. Look at something SNL, Saturday Night Live. They do the world's burning from COVID, or the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. They're let's talk about Joe Rogan and gave a horse tranquilizer. It's So I think the best way is independent support, and really just try to connect with people. I think that's the best way to do it.
What is one piece of information that every, for example, university student should be hearing, should be taking into account, should be reading something that the listeners right now can research or think about that they need, that you feel that they need, that isn't taught in the mainstream, that they don't really have in their day-to-day?
I think the biggest thing is that and the biggest key thing is that everything dies. I think that's an interesting concept. Where in the West we like to pretend that that stuff can live forever. We like to we have all these sayings where it's where death and life are seen as opposing forces. I think I just went to a Japanese art exhibit yesterday. It's very interesting how I think in the East, and obviously I'm not any sort of professional or my knowledge is quite limited, but what I see is that in the East, death and life are much closely connected. And I think that's kind of basically I'd say is that whether you're in business or whether you're in all this, whether you're in humanities, remember that Rome fell, that Greece fell, that all these civilizations before us have fallen, and we probably will too. And I think there's a humility in that I think a lot of people have lost. Where it's kind of this idea, like you're saying, where the thought patterns, there's this false confidence where, we can just repeat these thought patterns and everything will be okay because it's been okay for the people who did it before us. And we need to remember that, take a step back and say, everyone who's repeated thought patterns, you lose. And the only way to, really live is to create something new. And that's kind of what I see personally, how do I create something new? Because that's what me life is,
You gotta break the matrix.
Exactly. Sitting in the chair, living forever doesn't isn't life if you're only just regurgitating things that other people have said through your mind, you know? I think that's the kind of, I'd say any one piece of information is remember that everything dies, and remember that, you know, within that, not only, you know, maybe into philosophy, but, you know, not only should you enjoy life for that, enjoy every moment of life, but remember that, you know, I see it as, you know, to live life is to create something new, to innovate in yourself, and, you know, the classic, find yourself, but remember that you will die too. I think that, you know, whatever you do in life, remember that it's not permanent, and remember that it'll probably be wiped away, you know, the pyramids will crumble, but despite that, they're really cool, you know? Despite the fact that, you know, all of our government systems will probably fall one day, whether it's to the internet or aliens or whatever, and despite all that, you know, it's really cool in the moment, and how do we make it the coolest it possibly can be while it's here? And that's one piece of information I'd say that everyone should be cognizant of and, you know, remember and think about their daily life.
That's also a very stoic way to put it, you know. I mean, I remember once we were having a conversation about philosophy and Stoicism in particular. So can you tell me something like a tool or something that you take inspiration from Stoicism that you apply in your life and that has made a difference?
Yeah, that some people back home can also use.
Yeah, for sure.
An actionable tool.
Yeah, I think the Stoics have a lot of good ideas, a lot of bad ideas. And I just want to put this out for anyone. One of the biggest criticism of the Stoics is that a lot of the most famous ones were very wealthy themselves. So the idea of Stoic philosophy, this idea of really, you know, breaking down super basic, and again, not a professional, I've just done some on my own, but this idea to really enjoy life. It's the idea that despite whatever life throws at you, by knowing yourself, you can kind of withstand that and stay strong with the storm and simultaneously accept life, but also in that acceptance, you stay strong. And so I think that's the kind of general idea is really powerful. I think one of the concrete ways that I should implement this is, besides the whole life thing, because that's a big part of Stoics, where it's this idea that, you know, your life could end tomorrow, so what are you going to do about it? And they don't take the nihilist approach of, okay, life doesn't matter, but they say, okay, because that life really matters. I think one of the other Stoic things I would say is, to me, it's been very, I guess significant, I think is the term I'd use, is really the Stoic philosophy of, I think, how you interact with people. Whereas I think the Stoics do a really good job of reminding themselves and reminding others that you can't control how other people behave. And I think that's the thing where, you know, we like to think that, you know, we can influence people so much, and we like to think that even Facebook, you know, they like to think that they can control people so much. But when you really look at, like, when, you know, the scientists even within Facebook, I think his name is Jerome Lanier, he did a podcast with Lex Friedman talking about this, where, you know, Facebook doesn't control people in a very nuanced way. It makes you angry, it can make you happy-ish, but it's very basic. And I think that our influence on the people around us is very limited. I think we need to remember that, because not only is it not only for when you make people, not only when people are happy, but also when someone does something that hurts you, try to remember that in the sense where your influence on them didn't cause them to do that. You know, that's them doing that action to you. I think there's a lot of guilt that people have, like, oh, you know, someone hurt me, and you feel bad somehow that they hurt you, or you feel personally attacked.
Yeah.
And the Stoics do a good job of reminding people that the influence you have on people is limited, and you should kind of see it as that, see it as limited, and see it as, you know, these ocean swells or of sorts, and you're just riding the waves. I think that's a great Stoic mindset.
I think one thing I think I heard it on the podcast as well about Stoicism is that, I think it was Marcus Aurelius that said this, that life is like a boxing ring, you know? Like, people are going to throw jabs at you, people are going to hit you, people are going to punch you, but it's not that personal. You know, in the boxing ring, it's not that personal. You're just surviving, you're just fighting for life, and that's it. You don't have to take everything personally. If someone insults you, it's probably them projecting an insecurity. You know, it's not all about you. It's not always all about you.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and I think very loud that the Stoics say, I think for Marx as well, where it's this idea that, you know, the sun's rays aren't hurt by, like, shade, you know, where the sun keeps shining no matter how dark it is. And it's the idea that you try to, you know, he says, like, try to be a sun of sorts and try to spread your rays of happiness, of, you know, help, and whatever your rays of sunshine is, try to spread it, but don't stop spreading your sun rays because there's a shadow, because it closes the door, you know. If they're closing the door on your sun ray, that's on them. You know, you're giving them the sun, you're giving them the light. So again, it's like that thing, hey, you're in a boxing ring, you know, you just shine the light, you know, fight as well as you can. Yeah, it's just, you know, it's the ring of life.
Awesome.
3, 2, 1, go.
Crypto or stocks?
Crypto.
Least favorite subject?
Math.
Most favorite subject?
History.
Biggest achievement?
Family.
The future of humanity in one word?
Independent.
Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Ethereum.
Best business person in your opinion?
Jamie Dimon.
Best piece of advice?
Live purposefully.
Favorite book?
Birth of the Chaotic Age by D. Hawk.
Your favorite movie?
V for Vendetta.
Do exams matter? Yes or no?
No.
Best investment?
Bitcoin 10 years ago.
Money or happiness?
Happiness.
If you had a choice, what superpower would you have?
Flight.
Is crypto a bubble? Yes or no?
No.
Favorite car?
Let's do the Tesla's, what is the truck?
Yeah,
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck, yeah.
Worst aspect of journalism?
The ad incentives.
Hard work or smart work?
Smart work.
NFTs or real art?
Real art.
Do you feel fulfilled?
Yes.
That is a good time.
That
bro.
is-
How do you get rich?
I think there's rich, can be anything. I think for me, I see richness as like a richness of life. I think the best way to have like a richness of life is, I touched on this earlier, but it's really, create something, really live. I see like life isn't, life is like a little like seedling that grows. It grows into a tree. It can be, a big fat tree. It can be this little tree. It can be a bush. It can be, I think like one of the biggest living organisms is like this moss, basically, where this and it creates these what looks like trees, but it's really just all connected to this one organism. So then we just grow and create something new, and hopefully your growth and grow in a way that where your experience of growing is rich, but grow in a way where it doesn't keep others from growing too. I think that's a big part of having a rich life is there's this beautiful word called being compersive, and we need this more in society. Compersive is this idea of being happy with other people's success, and I think a lot of capitalism is people want to push other people down. I think growing in a way that's compersive, growing in a way where your growth is helped by other people's growth, where your growth helps other people's growth, where you create space for other people. Someone like Joe Rogan is famous for doing this, where he has comedians, everyone on his show, and it doesn't hurt his success. It builds his success. So doing I think the best way to be rich and have a rich life, to me, or even even when it comes to money, some of the wealthiest people, sure, maybe they cut off a lot of heads, but also some of the wealthiest people are people like Joe Rogan who supported other people, and that support just creates this beautiful feedback loop of success. So I think that's for me. It's keep it. The simplest way to say that is just grow in a way where your growth is beautiful, and you get to watch other people's growth in a beautiful way as well.
Uplift everybody
Yeah.
along with you. That's a very interesting take on it.